Scott just made the
back to
point.
Thomas
Jeff
Jefferson,
Jefferson
you'll
used to
read
be a
that-
lot more secure, not just. And they're off. While a dozen or more GOP hopefuls set off to scour Iowa's cornfields in search of votes, the Democratic side is teeming with candidate, singular, who just had it announced that she's not quite ready to announce. I'm Steve Green. This is a special three-part trifecta where we look at the mood of the voters and the health of our two major political parties. Yesterday in part one, we covered the Republicans, and today in part two, it's the Democrats' turn. So let's bring on Bill Whittle and Scott. Gentlemen, once again, I don't really want to get into the horse race aspect because it's just too soon for all that. Nevertheless, I think this Bloomberg Des Moines Register poll might tell us something interesting about the Democratic Party as we go into 2016. Let's get those numbers up there. There we have it. Hillary Clinton getting 56% of the vote, but look at the top three competitors she's up against. Joe Biden, who will turn 74 next year. Bernie Sanders, who's Vermont's self-declared socialist and no spring chicken, turning 75. And representing the Democratic youth wing, Elizabeth Warren, just 18 months younger than Hillary, turning 66 next summer. Now, none of them, by the way, not even Hillary, has announced that they're actually running, and they're not getting any younger. I should also add that these were the names given by Iowa voters and not a list of names presented by the pollsters. So this is it. These are the candidates that Iowa Democrats are thinking of. Scott, where the hell are the young up-and-comers in the Democratic Party?
You know, as you were saying that, I was just thinking, and this, this dates me as usual, but, this is a team. Let's imagine that Hillary Clinton really is a fantastic candidate, okay? So what you have on this team is you have Kenny Stabler at quarterback. The backup is George Blanda, who's 49 years old. And then after that, you've got nobody. Now, unfortunately, Hillary Clinton is no Kenny Stabler, and Joe Biden is no George Blanda. On his best day, George Blanda could kick Joe Biden's butt. And so, this is really a pathetic situation. A career-ending injury or somebody just deciding not to participate in the process, and all of a sudden they're thrown back on what? Elizabeth Warren? She may win the hearts and minds in Cambridge, but she is not going to play nationwide.
No, she sure isn't. You reminded me, Scott, of somebody back in the 80s, I used to call the Denver Broncos the Denver Elway, because we had John Elway, who was one of the league's best quarterbacks ever, and no team around him. He could get him to the Super Bowl, but that was it. They proceed to get their bottoms kicked. All right, Bill, you understand a thing or three about branding. I've seen your afterburners. And as you look at this Democratic field, Biden, Clinton, O'Malley, Sanders, Warren, Webb, what does this field tell you about the Democrats' brand for 2016?
Well, the first thing about that graph that we're looking at that I have to point out is that 9% of the voters in Vermont have suffered severe head trauma. That's got to be just a result of some kind of seatbelt law or ice on the highways or something. I mean, Joe Biden being somebody's first choice is a little hard to process. What it tells me, to my utter delight, is that as you look across the field of Democratic candidates for president, the average age is deceased. That's a really enjoyable thing to see. And it does two things, Scott and Steve. It does two things that are both important. First of all, it does say this is the party of old ideas, right? I mean, conservatives have always been the party of the steel, and we bring this on ourselves, I might add. Steel-rimmed spectacles and the bow ties and the suspenders and the cigars and the fedoras and all of the other trappings of conservative kind of affectedness. But the fact of the matter is we get onto that 2016 debate cycle, we're going to have all the young people on one side and all the old people on the other. And the old people are going to be on the Democratic side. That is a very powerful visual cue to many people. But I think the bigger issue and the deeper issue is why this is. Why? Why is it that the Democratic slate is so old and the Republican slate is so young? And I think the reason is that these ideas that these people grew up with just don't work. And they had a young charismatic guy to implement these ancient old dinosaur ideas of progressivism that have been around at least since the early 1900s. And he put them in place, and sure enough, they don't work. And that's why there are no young people flocking to the Democratic Party as leaders, as front runners, because no one can take the ideas of the current Democratic Party and make them work. Now, I know that people who are progressives will hear me say that and say, nah, 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 but the fact of the matter is the inverse is in fact true. You have guys like Bobby Jindal, you have guys like Scott Walker, you have guys that are young men, and young women too, for that matter, who are taking conservative principles. Walker and Jindal, especially in Louisiana and Wisconsin, perfect examples of young men who took these ideas, applied them to catastrophes of governance, and turned them around not over 10 years or 8 years, but in a year, pow, like that. And that's why we have young people on our side, because these ideas have been applied against this socialist, utopian, progressive blather, and have succeeded. And that's why they're there.
All right, folks, all kidding aside, although I have had an awful lot of codeine cough syrup in the last couple of days, but part of the reason for the dearth of serious Democratic contenders might just be something in the zeitgeist. Now, to me, it feels like the time has come for our first female president, and that Hillary Clinton is the right woman for that job. And as we learned in 2008, that zeitgeist can be an irresistible force. But with the economy softening, the bill coming due for Obamacare, the deficit set to balloon once more as soon as 2018, and Iran well on its way to getting nuclear weapons, maybe Republican candidates, and maybe this is the codeine talking, maybe Republican candidates might want to think twice and say, geez, let her have it. For Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, I'm Steve Green. Stay tuned for part 3, where we put together our dream tickets for both parties. That one's for members only, and we want your input, so don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.